Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton, and we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans today on this episode. Of course, the Titans started the season definitely defying odds of some people, and at the end of the season, it just didn't go the way they wanted. Of course, losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 7-game losing streak, and not making the playoffs. But here to talk to me about the Tennessee Titans and some of the new news out there is ESPN's Turron Davenport. What's going on, man?
What's up, man?
Just trying to make it, man. Make a dollar out of 15 cents. You know how it is. All right. So the big news of the week. The Titans finally found their general manager and former 49ers director of player personnel, Ran Carthon, who, of course, is a former Florida Gator for those that are Tennessee fans, by the way. But was a former pro scout with the Falcons, 5 years with the Rams, and then with the 49ers as well. So what was your immediate reaction when you kind of saw the news of him being named the general manager for the Titans?
I mean, I was excited about it. When you look at the external candidates, there were 6 that they reached out to. 5 of them were minorities. So I was excited about that. But then also you just have to look at the body of work that Carthon has. Rand is coming from a program that is viewed as one of the best in the league. And he had a very key part in building that roster. So that was exciting. I'm not a fan of the team, but it's always good when they are doing well. So I definitely was excited about that, just knowing that this is a step in the right direction towards that team getting back on track to where they were before.
Right. And, based off of what you know about him or what you've heard about him, what do you kind of view as his strength as an executive?
Well, there's a couple things. The communication part of it is something that continues to come up. And what's interesting to me about that communication part is just his ability to paint a picture of a player and get you to understand who that player is rather quickly. And that's something in talking to some of the scouts that have been on the road with him and traveled with him and had conversations or something. They said, Jeff Fisher said it on 102.5 The Game. He said that he has a way of just explaining and describing a player to where you know who he is before you actually watch him on film. And a lot of that is being able to go back to a catalog of players that you could say, hey, he reminds me of Treylon Burks. But if you picture Burks with the ability to do this or do that, like that's some of the things that, he uses to explain players. And that's what Jeff Fisher said is a really big part of him. So I would say that part, but there's a lot of it. Talking to Ben Troop, his college teammate, and talking to who else did I talk? There was I talked to so many people. I don't remember who else said it, but there were 2 people that told me that his just ability to make you feel comfortable and make you feel at home and welcome and relate to you is a big thing also.
Gotcha. Well, I'm looking forward to what he's going to do here in Nashville, of course. But, of course, he has a few decisions on his hand, but we're going to get into that in a second. But, of course, I want to talk about it's been a minute since you've been on. And, of course, we haven't talked about the Titans and how they finished the season, of course, unfortunately, not winning the division. What were some of your thoughts on this season for them, as the clock struck 0 in the last game?
More a thought of shock. I was really surprised that they didn't win the division. The 7-game losing streak, that's the worst that I've seen since I've been here. It felt like there was, I don't want to say relief, but just like, all right, let's get back and this is over. Let's get back and start working on not having this feeling again. That's what I got from the locker room. But yeah, it was mostly shock. I was surprised that they didn't win. I mean, you look after the Packers game, they're 7-3, 93% chance to win the division, make it to the postseason. And then that happened. So it's just shock.
Right. I got to say I was definitely shocked as well. I mean, it just seemed like they just couldn't get on track with anything they wanted to do. Couldn't get kind of those those winning plays they usually make in games. It just seemed like they weren't kind of going for them in this this streak of seven losses, which that was rough. That was rough to watch. I definitely have to say. I know it had to be interesting to watch from your perspective as well.
Yeah, to see these guys work throughout the week and go out there and have that performance and then talk to them about it afterward. It was definitely different from what I'm used to. But to their credit, they continued to persevere. So I respect that. At the end of the day, there just were too many injuries, bad situational football, turnovers, you name it, it happened. And it was almost like each week they found a new way to lose a game. And it was crazy.
Yeah, definitely was. Definitely was. Hopefully for Titans fans, they can erase those memories in 2023. But looking at the Titans and the job that Rand Carthon has in front of him, the first, probably the most important thing is the Jeffrey Simmons extension. It has to be, in my opinion, that has to be one of the most important things. How big is the energy around that situation? If have you kind of checked the temperature on that situation in regards to his contract extension?
Well, yeah, that's something that I'm sure Rand Carthon is going to want to come in and get done because that sends a message to the rest of the team. But as far as Simmons and his camp is concerned, Simmons, he said it when I asked him. He doesn't want to play on the fifth-year option. He doesn't want to go to free agency. He doesn't want to risk something happening. The fifth-year option is like $10.5 million. This is a guy that should be getting paid upwards of $25 million per year. So the math ain't mathing. You know what I mean? And he
Right.
wants to go ahead and get that long-term extension that he deserves. You look at what he did this year. As he said, shooting the ankle up for the last 9 weeks, still going out there and playing. Jeffrey Simmons is a walking embodiment of the Tennessee Titans and what they want to be. So if Rand Carthon wants to make sure that he sets the tone, that's a deal that he gets done. But I think before that, you got to find an offensive coordinator. That, in my opinion, is first things first.
That's definitely true. And, I've looked at a few of the offensive coordinators that they've, taken a look at. But one that actually just became available is Byron Leftwich from the Tampa Bay Bucks. He got relieved of his duties today. Do you think he potentially could factor into their offensive coordinator search?
I actually don't think he will factor in because of how much Mike Vrabel likes to run the football. And that's not something that they've done. This isn't a knock on Byron Leftwich by any means. I just don't think the styles match. You look at last year, Tom Brady had more pass attempts, and I know it's Tom Brady, and I know you have shortcomings at running back, but Leonard Fournette last time I checked was in that backfield. So there's no reason not to run the ball a little bit more. I know they had O-line issues also, but that I don't think is a match. So I would say no, but you never know what could happen. I think, you look at Charles London, the Falcons quarterback coach, who actually is going to be the OC at the Senior Bowl for one of those teams. I think he's a candidate. I would definitely contact the Eagles about Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach there. That's another one. Apparently, Matt Nagy didn't bother to return the phone call or attempt to reach out to him. So you take that off of there. You got Eric Bieniemy out there. I think that would be a very good match as well, just because of the creativity and the success, the proven success that he had there in Kansas City. So those are some options. Obviously, Tim Kelly is there on the roster or in the building already, and he's someone from a continuity standpoint. You got Mike LaFleur, who has experience with Rand Carthon from their time. I think they crossed paths with the Rams, but if not, it's still a familiarity with Kyle Shanahan, which is a scheme that Rand Carthon is very familiar with. So, and also a scheme that is a part of where Mike LaFleur's stuff came from, where Arthur Smith, derivative of that, and obviously Todd Downing.
Gotcha. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what that offensive coordinator position and who they bring in. I mean, the enemy would be an interesting one, in my opinion, because, of course, plenty of people have touted him to be a head coach over the last couple of years, and it just hasn't happened. So with this move, it would be an interesting move, kind of a lateral move in some senses, but in some senses, kind of put him in a better light because, you know, Andy Reid is the one that always gets talked about as being the offensive coordinator there for most people, and it would kind of get him out of the shadow of being in Andy Reid's shadow and kind of give him more of the light, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a lateral move, honestly. He does call plays. I believe it's the second half he calls plays. But coming to the Titans would allow him to be the full-time play caller. So it is a slight escalation from that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Now, other than Simmons, of course, there's a decision at quarterback that has to be made. And of course, with the offensive line, there's decisions there. Got to ask, what do you think is the likelihood that Tannehill comes back? I know a lot of people are saying, hey, he's probably going to be gone, or a lot of people, just in terms of like fans, and that probably want him gone. But what do you think is the real likelihood he comes back?
I think it's very likely that he comes back. He said he has a lot of good football left. He said he's going to be 35 when they open training camp. So I think when you look at the contract, it's $36.6 million. They could do some cap gymnastics, an extension, get that number down and make it more palatable. And with a more digestible number, I think Tannehill should absolutely be back.
Okay. All right. Now, the offensive line for the Titans definitely struggled this year. You know, you have the injury to Taylor Lewan and among other people there. Who have you kind of tabbed as some of maybe the targets or some of the guys to potentially bring back for that team, or have you thought about that far into the offseason for the Titans?
Well, I think you look at bringing Nate Davis back. He's the one free agent on that starting group. So you bring Nate Davis back at right guard. I think you should also look at signing like an Andre Dillard from the Eagles. You know, a lot of people will say Mike McGlinchey, and I get it from the 49ers. Yeah, there's the obvious tie, but why would the 49ers let him leave? You see what I'm saying? So it's cool to be like, oh, yeah, that would be it. But let's talk realistically. And you look at Andre Dillard, former first-round pick. He's a guy who Jordan Mailata bypassed, but Mailata was a personal project for Jeff Stoutland. I was in Philly when they drafted him, and that was a move that Stoutland pushed for because he wanted him. So naturally, you're going to push that and make that work, and he just gradually developed, and he's now a very solid left tackle. In the meantime, you have Andre Dillard there, who was coached very well. Stoutland's one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. So I think that is a move that is possible and a move that should happen.
Yeah, the crazy thing is I remember when Andre Dillard was coming out in the draft, he was actually a tight end before he was an offensive lineman. So
yeah,
that tells you right there, he's probably got some good feet, basically.
That's typically the case. I mean, Jason Peters was a tight end before he became an O lineman. There's a lot of offensive linemen who were former tight ends. You look at Lane Johnson, you know, he was a tight end and quarterback. So yeah, I mean, that's a good move. I think you do that. You look at drafting too, but the thing I like about signing Andre Dillard is you don't funnel yourself into having to go tackle at 11. Now you got options. Okay, if Paris Johnson is there, you could grab him. But if Quentin Johnston is there, you could grab him too. What if you don't address that left tackle position? You almost have to fill it via the draft, and everyone knows you have to fill it via the draft. And that's why in these mocks, you'll start to see teams jump up as far as the mocks with trades and stuff like that. You'll see teams jump up to 10 to go ahead and draft the Paris Johnson type and leapfrog the Titans.
Yeah, definitely something to watch for sure. And another key free agent that I want to talk about is Mr. David Long Jr. Now, of course, if you watch the Tennessee Titans and you watch David Long Jr. play, his play jumps out at you. I mean, he's not the biggest guy, but he's definitely going to be the guy that's going to catch your attention with the hits he makes and the plays that he makes. And at the linebacker core, he's the guy to me. So what do you think? What do you think is his prospects or him coming back? Has there been any dialogue between the Titans and him at this point?
Well, his agent is David Mulugeta, so you know that he's not going to take any shorts. He's well represented. I talked to David Long during locker cleanout day, and he said he wants to be back. He made a case for why he wants to be back. It's the guys in the locker room. It's the defense that he's playing in. He understands it, allows him to play fast. So I would feel that he is somebody that they would bring back. A lot of that is going to depend on how soon they're able to shed Zach Cunningham's contract off of the books. That's a $10.5 million savings, I believe it is. So that's going to help. It's just, you can't always sign everybody. So it's going to be interesting to see how this 2019 draft class, because that was a banging draft class by John Robinson. You look at the guys, outside of DeAndre Walker, everything has panned out. Obviously, A.J. Brown got traded, but I would like to say that he panned out while he was here. So they're starting to reap that's starting to come into play to where you have a really good draft class, a bunch of really good players. Now you got to sign.
Right. That'll be interesting as well. Now, of course, we've reached the end of the show, and that's all the questions I have for you in terms of this aspect. But I do have a little bit of a game of stay or go with a few players for the Tennessee Titans. Now, you did mention one already, and that would be Mr. Zach Cunningham. So I'm guessing you're saying he's going to be gone.
Yeah, I would say go on.
Okay. All right. Now, Robert Woods, he's got about a $12 million cap hit. So does he stay, or do the Titans see him playing on the field again?
That's a tough one. I think, the thing is, Mike Vrabel respects him so much for how he was able to work through that injury and come back. And obviously he's a blocking receiver. That's a big thing for Mike Vrabel. So I want to say go and get cheaper, like maybe a Nelson Aguilar or that type for half the money. But there's a good chance stay. But I'm going to say go, because I think just from a fiscal side of it, they're going to financial side of it.
Okay. Now another one, and he's been a long time Titan. Of course, injuries have kind of ravaged his career the last couple of years. That would be Taylor Lewan.
He knows it's a go. You watch Busting with the Boys. He knows it's a go. So I would say go.
Right. He definitely said it would be like narcissistic or selfish of him to say the Titans needed him, I think is what he said. Yeah. Now, Josh Dobbs, that's an interesting name.
That's a stay. I think that's a stay. It's not going to be expensive. He clearly is about what the Titans are about. He impressed them, so I would definitely say stay. Obviously, Malik Willis is there. You continue that developmental process and see what happens.
All right, and last one, Teair Tart. I know I think he's a restricted free agent, I believe.
An absolute stay. Absolute stay. And that's one of the guys that Mike Vrabel mentioned when he talked about getting better and developing as a pro, right? After your rookie year, you go back, you know what you're doing now. You could work out to get ready for football as opposed to the combine, and you make those progressions. And that's what Tart did each year. You look at the first year that he was with the Titans, he flashed, but he was always on the ground, always on the ground. Then the second year, he had a pretty solid performance. Now, this past year, he was a playmaker, right? And at one point led the team in pass breakups, which is hilarious to me. But the versatility, you could play him, obviously inside. But when I say versatility, you could even drop him back into coverage. You look at the Commanders game, he and Jeffrey Simmons dropped back and covered the running back on the screen. That's major to be able to have that. So I would say absolute stay. It's not going to be expensive. I would put at a minimum a second round tender on him. So that way, if a team does come in and try to get him and you decide not to, you get a second round pick.
Okay. All right. The one thing I always remember about him is he's got sweet feet when it comes to being in the trenches. I mean, and that's not. Yeah, definitely. The feet, definitely. I still remember. Let's see. I still remember going by Brandon Sheriff in the last game. I mean, he literally just went right by him. Yeah. It was a great move.
Club swim.
Yes, sir. Now, I want to thank you again for coming on, giving a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight when it comes to the Tennessee Titans, Mr. Turron Davenport. Can you tell everyone, where they can reach you, where they can find you, and what all they can look forward to from you.
Yeah, at T Davenport _NFL on Twitter. I think it's the same on IG, Turron Davenport. And then obviously ESPN.com. You click on the NFL page, teams and Titans, all the Titans workers on there. And then a lot of audio side of things, radio, you catch on 102.5 The Game. You can search Talking with TD. That's my podcast under iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those listening opportunities. They're there. Go ahead and search, subscribe, review. We appreciate it.
Well, one thing I always look forward to, man, is the introductions between you and Chris Sanders on the show, man. It's always hilarious.
Always got a random player that I gotta call him. You know, so it's fun we have fun on it, man. That's what it's about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you again for coming on, and thank you everyone for tuning in to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.